I'm Olivia Las Gonzalez, the Executive Director of San Francisco Camerawork, and I want to welcome you all to this virtual exhibition and collaborative conversation between students of California College of Arts, CCA, and Georgia State University, GSU. In its third year, this collaboration is proudly hosted by SF Camerawork in support of our commitment to nurture and promote the work of emerging artists. I'm really excited. I've seen last year's program and really excited for this year. I want to thank Aspen Mays, Associate Professor and Chair of Undergraduate Photography at California College of the Arts, for continuing this collaboration, and of course all the participating artists for what I know will be a thoughtful and thought-provoking dialogue. Special thanks to Elaine Moreno for moderating the discussion. Before I pass it back to our presenters, I want to put a plug in for our next event, the opening of Forecast 2021 on December 4th, which takes form both as an in-person pop-up exhibit and as an online exhibit. We're taking reservations for the in-person opening, reception, and the virtual opening program, which can be made on our website at sfcamerawork.org. We'll also have an expanded version of the exhibit that will be available there as well. And reservations will be necessary for the in-person event and are limited due to COVID-19 restrictions. We also do hope you'll make reservations for the online opening, which will be a wonderful program with some of the artists and jurors. The virtual opening will be from 11 to 12 on that day, and the in-person opening takes place at our pop-up exhibit location at Minnesota Street Project in room 211 from 4 to 7 p.m. Also upcoming are several member portfolio critiques. This Thursday, November 18th with Darcy Padilla, and on Tuesday, December 14 with Priya Kambli. And those reservation links are also on our website. So again, I'm really excited to hear what everyone has in store for us. I've seen the images and they're really fantastic, and very proud to be able to host this event this year. Now I'll turn the floor over to David for the rest of the program.
Thanks, Olivia, for that wonderful introduction. Great to see everybody. So hello, everybody. My name is David Marchetti. I'm a senior in the photography program at CCA. And I just want to start off the event by welcoming everyone that is joining us today and for being part of Inside Out, a student-led collaboration between photography majors from California College of the Arts and Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia. On behalf of CCA, we'd like to express our sincerest gratitude to the Georgia State University community for all their hard work, perspective, and partnership these past few weeks in creating works of art that are not only thought-provoking and reflective, but also relevant to the times we're currently living through. It's invigorating to witness both the CCA and GSU community dedicate themselves to bring what brings them joy by pursuing a life in the arts. And we all want to let you know that you inspire us to do that same thing every day. Art speaks to things that can't always be said with words. Through your craft, you help others to evoke and validate their emotions by providing comfort that are not only ways of feeling, but also ways of reacting. We are grateful for even the work and moments you create art that makes us uncomfortable and pushes us to grow. By leaning into these feelings, we push ourselves to think more openly and to see the world from different points of view. In addition, we'd like to acknowledge a deep appreciation to the following individuals who have committed their time, energy, and encouraging dialogue by bridging our communities and allowing us to form true connections with people near and far and push us to do our best work. Aspen Mays, Artist, Associate Professor, and Chair of Photography Department at CCA. Jill Frank, Artist and Assistant Professor of Photography at GSU. Xiaofeng Xu, visual artist, second-year MFA student and CCA teacher's assistant. And Xingjing Yo, visual designer. We also want to recognize and thank Olivia Las Gonzalez, Director of San Francisco Cameraworks, for her insight and contributions this semester, and Christina Graber, Gallery Manager, San Francisco Camerawork. And lastly, it's great to welcome back Elaine Moreno, visual artist, photographer, and CCA alum, an overall awesome person to moderate today's event. Now I'd like to hand off to CCA photography major Androgyny King, who will introduce and speak about Inside Out. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for that lovely introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Androgyny King. I use he, they pronouns. I am a third-year photography student with a minor in writing and literature. I would like to thank the curatorial team for crafting the following curatorial statement. Inside Out is a student-led collaboration between photography majors at the California College of Arts and Georgia State University. Although these two colleges are at opposite ends of the country, the students at each institution are exploring some common themes, such as the development of the self, family representation, and gender fluidity. Navigating these ideas through photography and other mediums, the students participating in this exchange are looking inward and out into the world, from cyanotypes that explore the subtlety and power of liminal spaces to the dynamics of family legacies that critically consider portrait photography. These artists are not only interested in creating community through the discussion of how to navigate a world that ignores and actively seeks to conceal their lived experiences, but also collectively consider the political and social ramifications of this omission. With renewed urgency and enthusiasm, as the world reopens, this group of emerging artists have treated this standstill time to process, reflect, and rethink their practices of using photography to depict the world, their subjects, and themselves. Each group of artists will interview one another and shape a roundtable conversation that will be hosted and streamed online by SF Camerawork. Ultimately, this collaboration will culminate into an online and in-person exhibition at CCA of each participating school's artwork. I would like to recognize and acknowledge today's moderator, Elaine Moreno, who participated in a similar show last year. Elaine Moreno is a Mexican-American visual artist from the Bay Area, working primarily in editorial and documentary photography. As a recent graduate from California College of the Arts, her aim is to create photographic work that represents Latinx and Bay Area cultures, uplifting stories and experiences from local and international communities. She believes creating art is a crucial form of feeling free and alive. Let us now give a warm welcome to Elaine Moreno. Elaine, please take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. I am very excited to be here. As I mentioned before, my name is Elaine Moreno. And before we start, I would like to take a moment to read a land acknowledgement. California College of the Arts campuses are located in Huichin and Yelamu, also known as Oakland and San Francisco, respectively on the unceded territories of Chochenyo and Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who have continuously lived upon this land since time immemorial. We recognize the historic discrimination and violence inflicted upon Indigenous peoples in California and the Americas, including their forced removal from ancestral lands and the deliberate and systematic destruction of their communities and culture. CCA honors Indigenous peoples, past, present, and future, here and around the world, and we wish to pay respect to local elders. Thank you again. Before we also jump into it, I would like to mention the exhibition that CCA has from this class. We can post it on the link, but here you'll find the Inside Out exhibition where each student made an online version of their work and has their social media linked to their image as well, so you can follow them if you like. And so today we will be listening to 4 groups of students' conversations, starting with Lauren and Tiago, Ashley and Ellie, Nandi and Weijing, and lastly, Leo and Stone. During their meets, each student developed questions from their interviews to better understand each other's artistic journeys. So as we continue with the presentations, we will have time for questions at the end of the event. So please feel free to post them in the chat so that we can discuss them at that time. Okay. And so let's start with Tiago and Lauren.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tiago. I am originally from Los Angeles, California, and I'm a senior at California College of the Arts, and I will be graduating next spring. And some common themes that I like to focus on in my work revolve around identity, masculinity, materialism, and the entity of Hollywood, California.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Tiago. My name is Lauren Dent. I am an artist in Atlanta. I grew up in Decatur, a town in Metro Atlanta, built on traditionally Muskogee lands. I am studying photography at GSU, but I specialize in generally film. And I generally focus on memory, spirituality, relationships, and narrative. And for this, I'll be focusing my questions around my current project, Morning Bird. Morning Bird is a collaboration between me and two boys named Javen and Cliffy. We're collaborating to tell the story of two boys exploring their creek to a local pond and turning inward to explore the film itself and the creation of the film and who's controlling the narrative. And all of that to ask the question, how can we open a line of dialogue with the young people of our generation and our younger selves and truly listen to them?
Thank you. Thank you for both sharing a little bit of background of your information and all your work. And I just kind of want to get started with some of the questions. And we could start with you, Lauren. Before you started this exchange, how did you imagine an artist in California would address like the place they live or work? Is this something that you see happening in like your other classmates' work as well?
Yeah, so in our conversations with you, Tiago, I know we struggled with this question because imagining the process that someone would use in a place that we don't know about is really tough. But before, I imagined an artist in LA would be addressing the cultural and national image of LA or of California, and in a constant conversation with that because it's such a center of cultural in America. But I see in your work, Tiago, the expression of your sensibilities as guided by your experiences in California. I see in my classmates' work a strong, and in my own work, a strong yearning to represent our respective homes and community. Yet I have other classmates saying, no, I just want to express myself, and this is just where I live. For me and for Morning Bird, I wanted to collaborate with the landscape where I grew up, and kind of same as the collaboration with Javen and Cliffy as all characters and elements in the story, but represent it in an accurate perspective of the darkness that is in the community as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And for Tiago, would you like to answer this question as well?
Yes, of course. I think like prior to talking to Lauren, it was like really hard for us both to sort of imagine what someone across the country was doing. And then like after we had conversed for a little bit, we sort of realized that we are not so different. Like a lot of us are sort of grappling with similar themes and topics. And although the work sort of is visually very different, like we're still grappling with very similar themes. And for my classmates, like not all of us are sort of from California. We're sort of spread out around the country and then from the world too. So I don't think everyone is really grappling with representing California, but maybe their experience in this sort of place right now. So I think like, yeah, a lot of our work is about California and also just about experiencing this place and also not. So it's a great mix of things, I think.
It really put into focus like the forces that me and Tiago are both under, and then the things that we're dealing with separately and the way we see things separately from such different parts of America.
Yeah, thank you. And you mentioned that you're working with like motion picture. And my next question is more about that. And how do you feel that motion picture work you have been making can be in conversation with the stills in this show. Since it is an online exhibition, it's a little bit different.
Right. So in the context of this, I focused on, I saw Morning Bird in conversation with some of Tiago's work, the lumen prints that they created. Morning Bird as a project required the freedom of my personal the freedom and agility of my photographic process. Yet it also required the narrative and temporal elements of my filmic process. And Tiago, the way that you used time plus light to abstract the forms of the jewelry in your lumen prints reminded me as an expression of your identity. It feels respective of how I use time plus photography to create this like choreographed reality that is, I feel very expressive for me. So it feels like in conversation with where, as an artist, you use temporal elements in your process and time as a medium in your process.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, another thing that Lauren and I were sort of talking about is that we sort of do other things just other than photography too. So like we were sort of both grappling, like, are we filmmakers? Are we photographers? Are we artists? Like, what are we? So it's really cool to sort of like share that similar feeling with him, because we sort of are moving closer to being artists. I feel like less just photographers. And I think that was a really nice moment to share with Lauren. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting because I've never thought about the form or the medium that I'm choosing or the process that I'm using as like an expression of identity. Mm-hmm. Until hearing you talk about the Envelop series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, the series is like time is very influenced with it, and light as well. Like it sort of allows for these prints to sort of exist in the sun, and as time passes, like it sort of, the shadow is sort of burned into the print, and that's sort of similar to how your time-based work is influencing your image-based work as well.
Yeah.
And a question for like the both of you, any of you can answer, but what do you think artists from the South and West Coast can learn from each other? And like, how could this affect your work?
I could start.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I think like I kind of already said it, like Lauren and I really realized that we're not that different. Like a lot of the things we are working on are very similar. A lot of the themes that we're grappling with are very similar, and it sort of was really cool to like find out that Lauren was a part, like in another part of the country, and we're still like, our work is in conversation with each other even though we had never met. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it definitely put into I think in our current reality itself is being questioned for like people's what people see as truth, and like talking to another artist and seeing their process in such a different place, and seeing, like I said, what forces we're both under and what is more unique to us. But to answer the question too, like I think our classmates and I definitely learned that like the world does see you. Like there's our community is our community in Atlanta, but the world sees that as well. And I think seeing your work in that context is important.
Great. I do have one more question for Lauren. But you speak about the importance of listening to a younger generation. Can you tell us more about what you see as the insight or value in doing that?
Yeah, so I don't think it's very controversial to say that as you grow up and you become adults, your identity solidifies and you lose a sort of sensitivity and confidence as you grow up. And I think our society doesn't take kids very seriously a lot of the time, even though they have a very clear insight to add. And I don't mean to like imply that you should treat kids as adults, because they're not, but that's exactly why they have a valid, interesting, and creative perspective on the world. I think this applies to young people today, and I also think it applies to the young people within ourselves too, gaining inspiration from the person you used to be and the person that you still are. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate both sharing really amazing information about each other and your work and your process and your journey as well. I would like to take time to call over Ashley and Ellie so that we
Thank you.
can start talking about their work. Thank you, Tiago and Lauren.
Hello, I'm Ellie Avina. I am a student at Georgia State University. I'm a BFA candidate with a concentration in photo, and my art practice revolves around expanding Latina or Latinx representation through photo documentation. And the work that you see, or that you will see, is titled as Boys of Rome, and that focuses on my younger family. And yeah, I don't know if I should let Ashley speak now.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm a junior at California College of the Arts. I'm originally from Indiana, but I go to school and make work in San Francisco. And most of my work is analog portraiture, and I mostly photograph my immediate friends and family in the spaces that we share and homes we've lived in together, or not always together, but yeah.
Great, awesome. Let's start with a few questions. Let's start with Ashley. How do you approach photographing in your immediate family?
Yeah, so during the making of a lot of these images, I've either lived with or near the family that I've been photographing. So it's been relatively easy to just pull out a camera whenever it was the right moment to do so. That's really one of the best parts of working with mostly 35mm is kind of the immediacy that I'm able to have in my photos because of such a small and portable format. But yeah, I do schedule times to photograph them as well. We kind of like set up a scene and do a thing, but they're really receptive to the work I'm making and like really good at being in photos. So really like what makes it the image is like them being there and being themselves in the images. So I really love that they like get to be part of it in that way. And I'm especially drawn to like making this work about my family because as mostly queer people creating a family, we kind of fit outside the traditional like standard of a nuclear family. So I think it's really important to document the love and the space that we have for each other. That's all.
That's beautiful, thank you. And Ellie, do you find there to be a sense of comfortability when making images with your loved ones?
Yes, I do. I think about this idea of trust and vulnerability that we're sharing mutually during the process of taking pictures, and also because they are my family. Another thing is like they know that I'm trying to photograph them from an honest approach and not in a harmful manner. And for me, there's a lot of familiarity when I'm photographing them because a lot of this work, or especially all of this one, is based out of Rome, and it's a town where I was born and raised in. And also I'm photographing a lot of times at my old childhood house or my aunt's house where I've spent many family get-togethers at.
Awesome. And Ellie, I have another question for you. In what ways do you collaborate with people in your photographs?
So I'd like to think that my images are more collaborative. However, there is a degree of staging as there is with photography. So a lot of times I'm photographing my family in a state of play, and that creates more dynamic images, and I'm not really able to quote unquote stage these images. And other times are more still and it's more formal like, and like they can be sitting down and it's more like posed in that way. And then of course, as photographing kids go, sometimes they don't want to participate, and that's totally okay. So I just am try to be receptive to that and ask for permission first before I enter their space and photograph them in.
Yeah, and a similar question for you, Ashley. What ways do you collaborate with people in your photographs?
Yeah, so when I photograph my family, sometimes there's more of a setup, but other times it'll just be like kind of a normal day. Like sometimes we'll just be like making brunch, and some people will be making eggs, some people will be setting the table, and I'll be like photographing my family. So then it'll be more of like a normal interaction that we would have regularly. And in those contexts, they're really good at like not acknowledging the camera at all, which is pretty cool. But an example of a staged image is actually like from the first slideshow of our work that's going to be in the online exhibition. That photo of Crystal in the shower was something we like completely did together. Like we'd been looking at photo books that morning, and just like it was the start of the pandemic. We didn't have a lot to do, but we were like looking at photo books and we were like, let's take photos now. And so that was something that we like did together, and just kind of like by both our skills combined made it happen. So it's like really collaborative in that way. So I'm like super thankful that my family is like not only like my best friends, but like huge collaborators in the work that I make as well.
Yeah, I can totally agree with you on that. And for Ashley, have your own family photos, like I'm assuming from stuff you've taken or family archive, inspired you to make these?
Yeah, so probably like a lot of you, my family has a lot of like photos and photo albums and shoeboxes and stuff that I grew up seeing. My grandparents' work really inspires me. I feel like they made really cool images of my family before I was a person. Um, and yeah, I've been really inspired by those kind of images growing up. Also, my great grandparents' work is really cool. I just think family photos are really exciting, and they've inspired me a lot in making my own images.
Thank you. And Ellie, do you find that you have uncovered any parts of your family from photographing them, like any secrets or anything just new to you?
I think I'd like to think I have. So I go to school at Georgia State, and that's in downtown Atlanta. So I feel like if I wasn't making this work of my family, I wouldn't necessarily have like an urgent reason to commute all the way to Rome and make photos of them. And because a lot of the times the kids are alone, or I am photographing them alone, it's like time spent like one-on-one with them. And so I feel like that strengthens our bonds of trust. And I think back to like trust and vulnerability again. I just feel like it is something that makes me be around them more. So I feel more close with them in that way. And I feel like they do too, especially one of my little brothers. He's always asking if I'm going to like come over, or, are you taking pictures today? So yeah, I'd like to think I have.
Amazing. And question for both of you, and we'll have you, Ellie, answer it first, but how do you think the pandemic changed this style of work? Like what makes this kind of work especially relevant right now?
So COVID changed a lot of things, as it did for a lot of people, of course. And for me, I found myself back in Rome because classes went online. I didn't have a reason to be in Atlanta anymore. So I was back at home, and I was just reminded of my family, and especially during those times where everything's uncertain. And it pushed me to make work of them again, because I have done similar work, but nothing as, I guess, intentional as this work is for me. And I was around my little brothers more because they also weren't in school. They were taking online classes. And at that point, I just realized that I wanted to document them in a way, and I'm referring to my younger brothers and the younger boys in my family. So for me, I was trying to focus on the spectrum of Latina or Mexican American boyhood. And that in the South, especially as a second generation American, it has a lot of implications of how you are raised and how you grow up. And I feel like it's different in California. I've been a few times and it just feels different to me. It's different than Mexico too, of course. And yeah, so I just became really interested in kind of digging into that and using the boys as a way to document that. And
Yeah.
sorry, another thing I remembered is that I feel like it's important today because of how growing up as a second generation immigrant or second generation American, it's relevant because a lot of times like we have to go through a lot of self-discovery or unlearning through the different cultures. You know, you have one side that wants you to be more American and maybe the other side wants you to like be more Mexican, whatever that means, you know. And all of this can just be really confusing, especially as a kid. And for me, it was a way to just kind of embrace it and also like kind of pay tribute to that, because I know for me, like it was a lot to go through that. And I just want my images to kind of just show them being boys because that's what they are. And they're just kids. And whether or not they choose to embrace the Latina culture or the American culture, like I just want their own person to shine through. So that's really my main intent with my work.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, we'll close this last question with Ashley.
So I honestly think that the pandemic has brought out a lot more of the kind of work that Ellie and I make. A lot of people were at home with their families, probably more than they expected to last year. So it isn't surprising to me that a lot of people made work about the people in their bubble during the time that we were, especially at home and like doing online school and such. And a lot of tragedy, isolation, and despair came out of the pandemic. So I definitely don't want to like paint it in a positive light, but I would say that like photos of people at home were a really positive thing to come out of it. So I know that I'm not the only photographer who took advantage of this time to photograph our loved ones. And I do think this work is especially relevant right now, especially with the rise of like snapshot images of the people you love, like kind of trending upward because of more accessibility of cameras. So I think it's really cool to think about the way that we're all documenting our lives in some way. And it's cool to think about the ways that we like memorialize the lives that we're living.
Yeah, I agree with you both. And similarly, I'm also working on a body of work that revolves photographing my family, and specifically a lot more this year because my parents moved back to Mexico. So it's a little different story, but it's also one of those unspoken narratives that happens a lot in Latina culture. But thank you so much for sharing about your work and your journey. And thank you for being here as well. We're gonna move on to Nandi and Weijian. Thank you both.
Hi everyone, my name is Weijun Shi, and I'm the junior student at CCA. For my work, it's like my work title is Where's Amo? It's like an archive of my family and structure, and also about Chinese immigration happened in the 90s at the beginning of this century. And also I talk about my generation of China.
Hello everyone. My name is Nandi Cooper. I'm a senior at Georgia State University. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been doing photography for about 2 to 3 years now. And I would say like my style preference is staged or cinematic photography. And my project, The Left Behind, it's a series of narrative photographs based on my interpretation of the apocalypse. It was actually inspired by COVID and the pandemic that we had. It has caused a lot of different emotions, from like excitement, stress, wanting to change the whole project altogether, and then like realizing it's some of, if not my best work so far. But I have loved the progression and development that my project has had, and I'm really excited to continue.
I love to hear that. I know sometimes we beat ourselves up as artists trying to complete something or, get something together right away. And usually it hits you when you least expect it. So I appreciate that. And I have a question for you, Nandi. And when you are coming up with your new work to create, do you visualize your concept before like starting? If so, does that work usually come out hand pre-visualizing it?
I always pre-visualize like for a few days before shooting. I usually have like a brainstorming session with myself. Then I write down the scenes that I came up with in my notes, but sometimes not all the scenes I write down are shot. Like it's usually just a feeling I get, like a green light in my head. Also, yes, the work usually comes out how I intended, but some photos are improvised during the process. Also, I find it like really interesting that one of my class's favorite photos was improvised, which I think shows like you can only do so much planning before like pure creativity takes over.
Yeah, that's true. And I have a question for Weijian.
Yes.
Have any challenges come up when making images around altered realities?
It's like for me, I love daydreaming, and the pre-visualize always work for me. Like the work that comes out could also be different from pre-visualize or just disappear because of the daydreaming. And sometimes choosing camera or lenses, those equipment maybe causes some problem, like using medium format camera to shoot a large scene is good, but it doesn't work for me if I really want to capture a moment of my younger cousin. And in that case, I will take my certified camera back to the ground. Yeah.
And how does this exploration of something so personal to you in your past grow to be a part of this larger body of work?
Like for me, like before exploring the world, I want to explore myself first, or in other words, like I want to do something for myself than to others. Like I was born in 1999. Everyone in China was excited to see the new century and what will happen to their country and what will be changing around them. My family was experiencing and immersed in that time, which went through a huge economy, developing background and immigrant movements in China. The work of my family and my personal memories is not only an explosion for myself, but also for my generation, like which grew in a fast changing but vague time. My confusion through explosion came out with questions like, where's Amo? Where's my roots? Where exactly I'm original from? And where's our roots for the Z generation in China? Yeah.
Thank you. And Nandi, similar questions. Have any challenges come up when making images around this like altered realities?
Yes, I have several challenges. First, I would say there's like a thin line between cringy work and good work when it comes to like my subject matter. And I feel like my perspective is different than the common perception about the apocalypse. So it's always a guessing game for how people will react. And I have realized there's no correct way to represent the apocalypse because it hasn't really happened yet, which can be a good or a bad thing. Because although there's room for like creative freedom, there's also a lot of like clashing opinions and perceptions. Also, like just randomly, another challenge would be that my model is a very bad actor. So I can't constantly, like, I have to work around that because I can't count on facial expressions to convey the emotions I'm trying to portray.
Got it. And Nandi, what do you think is important to creating a narrative? Do you think things like location, color, and subjects contribute to the themes in your work?
When it comes to narratives, I believe everything matters. I feel that location, color, and the subjects all contribute to the themes of my work. color is extremely important because it's a huge part of my story. Like I purposely desaturate all the greens and the overall look of the photograph because in my apocalypse, colors like green will like slowly dissolve from reality. And when it comes to my subject, like any small detail can like change the whole story. So when I'm out photographing him, I look for little details like how much facial hair he has, or if he just had like a fresh lineup. I tell him I can't photograph him because it doesn't look right for the story I'm creating. And I feel that narratives are like constantly evolving with society. So I have a future installation for my project as a whole. So I hope it will give like the audience an embodied experience of my narrative, like increasing their awareness and appreciation for differing perspectives, such as like my take on the apocalypse. And like when it comes to creating a narrative, especially fiction, it helps simulate hypothetical scenes, spaces, and like states of mind. And when people see my photographs of this like staged narrative, they know they are encountering a fictional narrative, meaning the audience, like they're not simply learning to understand the world as it is, but they are learning to imagine a different one.
I like that. That's awesome. And you both also sometimes photograph your family members. What is that experience like for you? How is it different from your other work? And we can start with Weixian.
Yeah, like the term home has a special meaning for me. As mentioned in my work, my family members are located in the southwest and the northmost and the southmost of the China. Like it's really in a high range of China's map, Chinese map, and those three places and three homes have brought me different cultural habits, eating habit or contradiction in comparison and contrast. This means that the way I communicate with them is also different. When I try to take image of them, it's also different. My family is in the north, which in the Inner Mongolia, needs to communicate in a more warm, euphemistic way. It's like if I don't like it, I would say I'm okay rather than I don't like it. The things that happened when I was really younger, I was often reluctant to tell them everything about myself because of the unfamiliar. As my father's side, Inner Mongolia bears more memories that have been repeated with my father and even my grandfather. But for Chengdu, which is in the southwest of China, and Canton, I think it is the place that left my memory traces, and the place that I'm more familiar with, and also I left the latest pictures. I don't think there's any difference from my other work. Like I wouldn't take the cameras without love.
Thank you. And for you, Nandi, as well, the same question.
I found it interesting, like hearing other people talk about photographing their family and like how much they love it and like bonding. And I'm like, me and my cousin always argue. Like it's because like he complains a lot, and all there are like some easy access moments when it comes to photographing him because we live together. But I think I would like prefer, like for this project, I would have preferred to work with someone with like more skill and like interest in modeling, because it has been like very difficult because like he has like 3 jobs and it's like conflicting schedules. And I feel like when you work with your family, it's more of a collaborative process, like to like see what they can do and what they can't do. And so like, although I'm comfortable with my cousin, I feel like there have been like multiple occurrences where like he just refused to do like simple things. Like I've asked him to like sit on the ground and we'll just go back and forth and he'll be like, bro, just take the picture. And I'm like, okay, just forget it. But like, it's I like working with family, but like I feel like for certain projects I would prefer not to.
That's understandable. Sometimes with artists, we we wouldn't want to be in control of certain things as well. So totally makes sense. Is there anything else that either of you would like to share before we move on to the next group? Well, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourselves and your artistic journey as well. I do appreciate you being here today. Thank you. And we can move on to the last group, Leo and Stone.
Hey y'all, I guess I'll introduce myself first. I'm Stone. I'm a senior photo major at Georgia State University. I do use they, them pronouns. I'm from Fluidity, like a really small town in Georgia. And through my experience growing up in a rural area, I try to find similar spaces all throughout the state of Georgia to photograph. I usually spend several days living in my car, traveling all across Georgia, avoiding highways, major cities, stuff like that, photographing abandoned spaces that I come across. I try to use my image making as a way to memorialize forgotten about or abandoned spaces and objects. A lot of the images that come out of these trips are 100% dependent on the process I follow and the generic rules that I've established for myself when I'm making the work. Additionally, I'm still working out on trying to figure out how to photograph in certain spaces that aren't necessarily similar to my demographic. And I think that we're going to talk about that quite a bit with our questions. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Leo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leo. I am an abstract landscape photographer at CCA. I use they, them, and he, him pronouns. And so basically in my work, I use screen captures of Google Earth to decontextualize and abstract images of land. This work serves as a meditation on visual relationships and emphasizes the experiential. In reflecting on the harm I caused by occupying Indigenous land, I have begun to realize how that harm extends to my art practice and the way I depict land in my photographs. Initially, I did not take note of the land I was photographing. In abstracting the landscape in this way, I have stripped the land of all context, of all cultural, political, and personal histories. So I have begun to source the images by retracing my steps virtually and recording the locations. And the images I have chosen to show are undergoing a process of recontextualization that includes coordinates, settlement names, and the unceded Indigenous territories they belong to.
Thank you. And I would like to start off with the question, how do you both approach authorship in your making? And we can start with Leo.
So I am torn between feeling entitled to the images I've composed, as people often dismiss my ownership of these images because they were taken by a satellite and accessible technology is devalued, and also understanding that land is a highly politicized subject. Early landscape photography, for example, was used by colonizers to catalog natural resources in preparation for extraction and as a way to claim and possess land. And my identity as a settler on unceded Ohlone land and as a white landscape photographer who creates images of occupied territories really complicates that question of authorship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a little different. I feel that like the idea of authorship when it specifically comes to my image making is not something I often think about because I'm in the space making the photographs, but I do think of the authorship in terms of the things I'm taking pictures of. I'm inside abandoned houses, abandoned spaces, places that are not owned or occupied, and I have to figure out, because I'm not directly in those spaces as an owner, I have to ask myself constantly if I'm allowed to photograph these spaces to memorialize them, even though I have no right or ownership to the objects or the subjects that I'm photographing. So yeah, it's a constant struggle that I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, I hear you. And a question for you, what defines an image as your own? creation?
Yeah, I feel like all the images that I make could be considered my creations because I'm in the space physically taking the image. However, I don't feel that that's the only way to make images. I mean, making images the way that Leo does still gives Leo authorship of the curated image. I have a discussion all the time with my classmates that other mediums are often allowed to appropriate and use other people's work as their own. And there's no question asked. Yet as photographers, we seem to sometimes be held to a higher standard of truth making and like being forced to be factual instead of being creative. So I think that like it's a highly debated subject when it comes to photography about if we're allowed to do appreciation or appropriation or stuff like that. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Leo, a question for you as well.
So in the context of landscape photography, I think of photographer Mercedes Dorame, someone whose work we looked into a little bit earlier in the semester. And what stood out to me about her talk was her description of her process as a collaboration with the land. And my takeaway is her relationship to the land is so clear in her work. She has really helped me understand why, in many ways, I've been struggling to connect to my work. For example, my identity as a white settler is visible in my decontextualized images of the land. And the way I have previously failed to acknowledge the subject of my photographs is a continuation of my familial colonial legacy. Mercedes articulates, quote, part of being grounded in the landscape is recognizing where you are and who the original caretakers of the land are, end quote. So it's important to recognize that like the biodiversity of the lands we occupy in the United States were cultivated by Indigenous communities, and the composition of the photographs I create are a direct result of this care.
And Leo, what approach do you take to making images in unfamiliar places, or like for you using the satellite images?
Mm-hmm. Well, sourcing the land whose imagery I'm appropriating has been a really important development in my artistic practice, because in the event of abstraction, you are actively erasing the relationship between your subject and the image you create. And so this process of recontextualization through sourcing and crediting the original caretakers of the land I'm photographing has really helped inform the way I make and present images.
I see. And Stone, what approach do you take to making images in unfamiliar places?
Yeah, so I feel like my approach is very literal. A lot of the work I'm making is 100% dependent on the process I talked about, living in my car, traveling around Georgia, avoiding highways, often taking random side roads and trying to go down dirt roads and just take generic paths within the path that I've set for myself. When I do find like spaces like houses or barns, I do try and do a walkthrough to make sure everything is safe, that I'm going to be safe. And then once I determine that I'm interested in the subject or it's going to be safe for me to go in with my camera, I just go in and start making images. I'm usually trying to be pretty quick about this process because at the end of the day, technically I am trespassing. I try to do my best to never physically break into a space because I just don't feel comfortable doing that. So typically I'm always going in to spaces that are accessible, even though it's illegal what I'm doing. So I try to get out or get in and get out and photograph the objects that I'm interested in, then go on to the next space. So I took this as more of a little thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And are there ethical concerns about representing other people in your work at all?
Yes, absolutely. I talk about this with my peers and my professors all the time about photographing spaces that I feel like I shouldn't be in or don't belong in as a white person. But a lot of discussions often end up like leading to the fact that it's really hard to photograph the South without photographing non-white spaces because the South is not just white. So I felt that it would be a disservice to myself as a photographer, but also to the viewers who are interested in my work to not photograph those spaces that don't have a direct connection to being a white person. I often try to go into spaces that are 100% unoccupied, so that I'm not being disrespectful to unhoused people. When I'm out and I do find someone that may be unhoused, I try my best. I carry water and I do my due diligence to make sure people are being taken care of. And I'm never out to try and hurt anyone with the photographs I make. But I do have a huge passion in memorializing forgotten spaces. And I think it's a really important project for me.
Yeah, thank you. And how have these discussions been framed in your classes or with each other? I know, having been paired with Leo, I'm sure you have talked about this before, and I'm wondering if Leo or you have anything to share about
that. I think it has just been like an opportunity for both of us to grow and to articulate like what we're thinking about when we're making these images, what we're thinking about after we've made these images, how they're received. Yeah, just I think like approaching each other with honesty and kindness and like being invested in each other's growth has been a really fruitful experience for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. Within my own class, we talk a lot about, especially the people in my class that are photographing people, specifically like Harry and Ellie, whose work we saw it being a collaboration with their subject matter. And as someone who's not photographing people, I'm trying to figure out how to attempt to make it a collaboration with the spaces that I'm in without like making it about people. So like it's definitely something that I've been working on, and I think the conversations that I've had outside of right now with Leo has been really beneficial to like trying to figure out how to go about ethically making the images that I'm making, and like trying to figure out how to justify the images that I'm really passionate about. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Did you have, and either of you have anything else that you wanted to share that maybe we weren't able to touch on, that you'd like to bring up before we close out?
Just in regards to that last question, I think it's yeah, really important to consider and to name the identities that inform our experiences, and also the legacy of photography and how it has functioned as a tool of imperialism, even like the act of shooting and capturing an image, language we super frequently hear in the field of photography, and how that's indicative of that violent legacy. Yeah, that's what I would have to add.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for sharing your journey and a little bit about yourselves. Super appreciate you. Let's see. I want to just thank all the students right now for sharing and for being so open and talking a little bit about their journey as we start to move on to the next thing. Thank you again. Lavender, were you able to gather some questions that we received in the chat?
Yeah, so hi everybody, I'm Lavender, a senior student at CCA. So for today, I'm a chat box controller. So like everyone asks a lot of very good questions, and we could ask all of them. So I pick a few of them. Like a lot of questions are from our CCA or GSU students. So yeah, like for Diego and Lauren, David asked the good question. So David, can you repeat your question? Did you remember it?
Hold on a sec. It was right at the beginning there. Yeah, I can't find it, but I think my question for Lauren was, how was it, what are some of the challenges that you came up against working with young kids, and you're dealing with, themes and subject matter that are, complicated and complex? Were there any ways that you were working with them that you could, make it not easier, but just, maybe communicate those ideas that you're trying to get across?
Right. So I gained a lot of experience and inspiration, and a lot of the guidance for this project came from my mom, who is a ballet teacher and choreographer. And throughout it was interesting because once we started shooting with these two boys, the first shoot day we went and I thought, okay, let's explore this park. I'm gonna film a little bit. You guys can film a little bit. Let's just have fun. Let's explore. You guys take the story, do what you want. And then by the end of the process, as I was kind of reckoning with how we would share this collaborative process and what my role was as a director, a photographer, how was I collaborating with these kids without taking away agency to be a part of the story creation. And I came to find that it was this balance that I struck, that, giving them direction and giving them suggested movements and directing is not taking away their agency. It's just being a collaborative partner in that process. And I think with the complex subject matter, they actually made the subject matter more complex. I went into this project thinking I was going to tell one story, and through just hearing them talk, hearing them, us all having fun together and just getting to know each other, the story complicated exponentially.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, just to follow up comment. I think it's interesting. Once you start photographing or filming, in your case, and both, how the creative process can take an organic pathway for both, the person that you're collaborating with and yourself that's actually putting the work down in some sort of recording device. So thanks. That's really cool.
Yeah, so Ryan also have a question for Diego. I post the question on the chat box, so if you guys didn't remember it. Yeah, Ryan, can you repeat your question again for Diego?
Hey, I see the question in the chat. I can just.
Sorry, I was having
cool.
some Zoom issues, but yeah, go on. My bad.
Oh, so his question was sort of asking how I see the intersection between abstraction and personal storytelling, and is there a balance in one or the other? How to utilize them? And I feel like through my images and my lumen prints, I sort of use jewelry from my mother, actually, that I sort of found as a child and was sort of interested in how these sort of pieces cued me into sort of thinking more about my identity and my queerness, and sort of I use them now in my work to sort of talk back to myself as a child almost, and sort of talk about how that curious and innocent interest in sort of things, and that was something that I use now in my work. And I think the abstraction sort of helps my storytelling of identity because it allows me to work freely and allows me to work through my imagination. And I think through color and through form, I'm able to sort of reveal more about myself through these works. Yeah.
Yeah, so Keith have a question for both of you guys. Like, have you tried exploring your concept in each other medium to see how the meaning will change? So this question is for both of you, Diego and Lauren. Yeah.
I don't know how. So I have actually one of the images that you see kind of rolling through the slideshows, Calvin and Ari or Javen and Cliffy. And so throughout the process, I tried taking images and trying to make images from the perspective of these characters, Calvin and Ari, who are the respective characters of Javen and Cliffy, the actors, which was a really interesting process and kind of made me think about like what I was talking about earlier with where time plays into the process and what photography stills versus motion picture bring to the story. Yeah.
And to sort of touch on that, for me, I've never really experimented with filmmaking, but I feel like filmmaking is very much at the core of my work. A lot of my photographs are based around Hollywood, California, and sort of how Hollywood itself is represented in like the media and film versus how like I record it with the camera in my experience and how it looks in real life. And I think as time goes on, I definitely want to transition to using more film and more like time-based works because yeah, I think it's something I really want to explore and could play well in my work.
Yeah, thank you guys. So let's move on, Ashley and Amy. So Harry have a good question. So Harry, do you wanna repeat your question again? I posted in your chat box already.
Yeah. Hey guys. So my question was kind of about how, I've had a lot of discussions because of my work as well about the ethics of representation within photography and like the historical use of that and how that plays into work. And so I was wondering from both of you how important it is for you to have your subjects of your work be like close family and friends of you and how that plays in.
So I'm sorry. Okay, I was just interpreting the question as, for me, I feel like in a way it doesn't necessarily matter too much in terms of like closeness. Of course, that is a factor for me, and I do consider myself close to my family. What I think about is it's more important that I'm telling my own narrative, a narrative that pertains to me. It's not like I feel like the history of photo and education is like from the white man's perspective. And for me, this is my way to take control of the narrative, especially how Latinos and Mexicans have been portrayed in the media. I feel like that to me matters more than say like closeness. So
I actually have kind of a different answer. I think closeness is really like the reason I photograph my family. And like most of what I'm trying to do, I'm not really trying to represent anything in making my work. I'm just trying to document my own family and the people I love. So I think that I would have probably a really different approach if I was trying to do something other than that.
Yeah, so also Meg, would you mind repeat your question?
Yeah, no problem. To both of you, you both have strong tendencies in portraiture. Do you think you'll continue, do you think you'll still work within your communities or further the familial aspect? And where do you see your future work going in terms of these close, I guess, portraits?
I think I really like taking portraits, and I'll probably always take portraits. I'm not really sure what I plan on doing in the future. But I think at least for the next like year while I'm in school, I'm going to keep making this project. I'm going to keep photographing my family because I really like doing it. I really enjoy it, but I'm not really sure what work I'll make after that. But I'll probably always photograph them. Yeah.
I feel like I'm the same way with Ashley. I love portraiture. That's my favorite, I guess, style to photograph at least. And definitely I see Boys of Rome or just photographing my family as a lifelong project. So yes, to answer your question, yes.
Also, Cave have a question for Ashley. Yeah, so Cave.
I don't really have rules. I mean, there's like things I won't do because I don't think they're ethical, and I think that like when I'm photographing my family, it's like something that they're very much a part of, and I'm not going to do anything that makes them uncomfortable or that they don't want to do. But I don't really have rules outside of like those things. I think that, yeah, I don't know. It's really different every time. Like there's just a lot of like staging images, and there's a lot of just like photographing in moments as they happen. But in those moments, I don't think I really create many rules. I just kind of take the photos as they happen.
Thank you, Ashley, for your answer. So let's move on to the Nettie and Wei Jins. Jackson, would you mind to repeat your question, because your question is really good. Yeah.
Guys, so I was curious, since y'all both work with an altered reality, using cameras, I was wondering, do you think the camera automatically creates an altered reality just by definition?
I wish the camera did that. I wish there was like an apocalypse button on my camera. If there is, I can't find it. But I feel like it's a little bit of everything that creates the altered reality, like how you choose to like interact with the space that you're in. And it's the like from like the clothes they wear to the facial expressions. I feel like it's just a little bit of everything for the altered reality.
Like for me, I agree with what Landy just said, and I think for me, it's like make an image like with your comfortable camera or even your iPhone. Yeah. So I don't think like camera is just camera, like equipment is just equipment. It does not a lot of matters on my work.
Also, Meg, can you repeat your question for Wei Jin?
Yeah. Wei Jin, you were talking when you were talking about your parents, and I think you said something about you don't tell your parents everything that has happened to you personally. And forgive me if that quote is wrong, but do you think you'll do more self-portraits in the future to explore like these untold things?
Yeah, like actually like for not, it's not only for my parents, it's for my father's side and my mother's side family. It's like something I want to tell them, and I don't really want, like when I was just a little kid, like like when my grandma, like my mother's side, and she made a cucumber, but and I will tell her like why cucumber again? Like cucumber sucks. Uh, the things like that. But for my father's side, I would say like um, cucumber is good. Even I don't really like cucumber. You know, as a kid, you some sort of your logic is like that. Like you want to tell something, even it's not that doesn't matter. You want to tell the people you more familiar with, you more kind of reliable. Yeah.
Thank you, Regine. So, Denario, could you repeat your question for both of them?
Yeah, so I wanted to know where else do you hope to accomplish or add to your projects, and how would you go about doing it?
I would like to add a more sculptural aspect to my project, one where you can actually put yourself into the apocalypse. So I'm hoping to do that for my my future installation.
Yeah, for me, I guess I will keep going for my project after I finish college here. And for now, I want to more focus on some writing about. I have a concept like homemade KFC. It's like when I was a child, even in that time, the economy of my family and China is not so good. You cannot just grab KFC whenever you want. It's like you know, it's a kind of a gift to me. Like when I want to like celebrate my birthday, my mom or my father will take me to the KFC and grab some fried chicken, and things like that. But you know, the thing totally changed for now. So I really want to um, record it, so those writings, and also not only about my family and also like the changing of my country. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Regine. So let's move on to Stone and Leo. Jackson, could you mind to repeat your question again?
Sure. So I feel like this came up, I think Ashley said it earlier, but the Stone used it several times to memorialize. I'm just curious what you think of that word. I don't know. I did a lot of research on memorials about a year ago, and I never really found any answers. But curious how you view that world.
Yeah. I think I can speak on that. I think I use memorialize as a way to just replace the word document, I guess, because like a lot of the things that I photograph are forgotten about in abandoned spaces. So like as I'm taking photographs of them, they're inherently becoming a permanent fixture, being memorialized that people can see for generations to come. And so I often go back to the idea that I don't have any photographs of my family home from growing up. And so I think it's really important to be able to go into these spaces, photograph them, and have a possibility of someone that either has a connection or wants to have a connection with the space that can remember it forever. So I think that's what I mean when I say memorialize, just a different way to say to document it and to have it in a space or be remembered forever. Yeah.
So Ivan, could you mind repeat your question for Leo?
Hey, yeah. First of all, this is amazing. Thank you all for doing this. I'm loving the conversations and the work. I'm on my phone, and so Leo, it was more of a sort of clarification, and then it made me ask a question, which is, I thought I heard you say that abstraction is an inherent erasure, and I guess I wanted to ask if if that's true, if you said or think that. I'm not positive, and then if so, I'm wondering if you think then that the opposite is, the opposite of an erasure is like clarity of vision. Is kind of my question.
I think kind of putting my work side by side with Tiago's is a great way to show how abstraction can either erase the relationship between the subject and the image or create a relationship between the subject and the image. For example, Tiago is using jewelry to kind of comment on themes related to identity, whereas I am using abstraction as a tool of beautification, and in doing so am removing the context of the subject. And yeah, that's something I'm kind of trying to contend with in my work. Whether abstraction innately whether abstraction innately erases meaning or and yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to do the opposite, how to create a narrative and create meaning through my abstraction, similar to how Tiago makes work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leo. Meg also have a question for Leo. Meg, can you?
Yes. So Leo, I'm familiar with your work because we worked together prior to this, but I really love your landscape abstracts. But after seeing them the first time, I kind of went on Google Earth and realized that Google Earth images are copyrighted. And I just was curious, can you talk about how that makes itself known in your work and how you feel about like imagery that you find and like ownership or authorship, I guess, of, because what I gathered from Google was that it was like theirs, and if you wanted to use it like for commercial purposes. So not that this is particularly commercial, it's art, and it is in a way, but I was just kind of curious if you have thoughts about that at all.
Yeah, I think using appropriating imagery that is intended for commercial use is an interesting way of kind of turning that on its head, and using it as a tool for abstraction is kind of a way to a way of denial of that like capitalist reality. And I probably should be thinking a little bit more about copyright than I am, but honestly, I can't really be bothered. The way I'm working, this is a conversation that Stone and I have had a lot, but I think one thing that we have in common is we're not super interested in like the typical gallery setting. I think a big emphasis in our practice is making our work as accessible as possible. And so a lot of the distribution of my work kind of comes in the form of homemade zines, and both Stone and I are working this semester on learning binding techniques for books. So yeah, I don't really pay all that much attention to what Google thinks about the work I'm doing, and I don't really see that changing. But yeah, it is an interesting thing that does kind of inform my concept about that departure from the intent of these images and how they're being used. And it's also just, something I get a lot of pushback on, because technically these images exist, but so does an image of every surface of the earth. Like one could definitely argue that these aren't my images. And that person might be me, like for not these reasons, but for things I mentioned earlier. Yeah, I'm going in circles a little bit, but I do, yeah, the question of authorship is a really complicated question, and one I don't have a solid stance on, but not because of Google, not because of copyright.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you all for your questions. They were all very good questions. Like everyone has also answered our question very well. There are still a lot of questions that were not asked though. So, but you guys can follow them on social media. Yeah. So next up is our closing statement from Aspen.
Hi, everyone. I'm actually going to invite Elaine to maybe wrap things up for us. But I will say, I was so impressed with everyone tonight, and you all did such a great job. It was really clear and engaging, and you all should be really proud of yourselves. And it's been such a pleasure to get to know the students a little bit in Georgia and to work with Jill. You're all so well spoken, and I think the future is really bright. And I hope the audience got a sense of just the range of questions and topics, and how deeply all of these students are really engaging with some of the biggest questions in the medium right now. And I want to also thank Elaine for being a great moderator. It's such a pleasure to have you back in the mix. And I want to thank Camerawork, Olivia and Christina, for all the work you did behind the scenes to make this happen. So thank you so much for on behalf of CCA and the CCA photo program. Elaine, I don't know if you want to say a final word or two, and Christina or Olivia, if you want to jump on, awesome. But thank you, everybody.
Just want to say thank you, and it was an honor and a pleasure being here today, moderating and seeing some old classmates, schoolmates. Once again, thank you to all the students for participating. I know it feels intense and it can be a lot sometimes, but this is part of the journey, part of your practice, and it's always just good to put yourself out there and to speak about what you do and share what you do. I think you all do amazing work, and I am very proud of you. Thank you, everyone.
I want to add my thank you as well to all the students. I've been in your place, not with this wonderful technology, but presenting, and you've presented to a wide audience, and it was a really, really wonderful and thought-provoking program. So I want to thank you all for sharing your thoughts and ideas with us so publicly.